So, how good have the Owl House episodes been since episode 1? Well, overall it was pretty alright, but it is setting forth a trend that is scaring me for the future. And coupled with some of the leaked photos of other episodes that are going to be released sooner or later, that have surfaced on the web, and us being halfway through the mid-season finale, I'm fucking terrified like previously stated. But before we get into that, let's get into the general review of the latest episode. So the highlights of this episode to me were definitely the backgrounds and the animation, because all of it looks fantastic, especially in Gus's part of the story. The amount of lore and story that just comes from one location makes me wonder why don't they utilize these kind of backgrounds even more. I love the amount of lore the addition of the Keeper also brings. It actually makes you ask questions about the world, like why is illusion magic so looked down upon, and why is the Keeper in such bad shape? Do Coven leaders get their own separate graveyards? It's incredible how small the details are, but how much of an impact it has and how simple it is to do. The same can be said about the library during the Gus and Amity B-plot, where the library is a sprawling dungeon with an almost MC Escher style to it. Visually, this episode was superb, and the way they portray the illusion's full power is just icing on the cake. It's great. The final act was pretty much incredible for both plots, but we'll get into that later on. Let's take a second to talk about the pacing, because my god, that was the worst part of this episode. As much as each plot is enjoyable, the amount of imbalance given to each makes the resolutions feel earned, but kind of rushed. 1 second we're on this plot, and without warning we're sent right back to another plot. This episode is incredibly bipolar in the way it's presented, and I felt that if more balance was given to each plot, it could have worked much better. I mean, they do have 20 minutes. To be fair, this episode's fairly hard to review because each plot is so different from one another that they don't really go in together actually. They only are tied in from the beginning. So let's break down each plot and review them separately because they are both, again, very distinct from each other, and I like the fact that they are, to be honest. We finally have a side plot that takes up the majority of the episode that has nothing to do with Luz, which in turn gives Gus the protagonist role, and that makes me really happy. So let's check it out. I was very, very, very surprised at how quickly things went for this relationship. Seriously, it went from literally 0 to 100 real quick.
Way of sneaking into people's hearts.
While I'm not a big fan of angsty drawn-out romance, I am a fan of proper development, and while I think it's there, it's moving along way too quickly for me to actually enjoy it. But first, let's actually talk about the story, which is also pretty alright and has an interesting payoff. So, Luz has been regularly taking Gus's library card to spy and see what Amity's doing. While at the library, she figures out that there was at one point a human in the Boiling Owls and has his diary in the library. With an awkward greeting and low-key flirting, they get to finding the journal to find out more information about the portal door and find a way back to the human world. Long story short, they get into trouble, Amity gets fired, and decides to change by getting a haircut. Luz gets Amity's job back, and they share an intimate moment with a kiss on the cheek. Now in general, I feel like the plot with Gus and Luz and Amity, those two should have been completely different episodes because I felt like more time was dedicated on Gus rather than Luz, with ironically less time put into one of the most important lore dumps in the show with the past human's narration of the diary and the actual existence of the diary. I know I might sound like a hypocrite by saying, oh, I don't want any more Luz, I want to see side characters, and the one episode where we get to see the majority side character is the one episode that we needed to focus on the lore the most. Only the fucking Owl House can pull that off. I swear to God, it's only the fucking Owl House. To get back on track, the flirting was cute, and I thought it would just be cute, but the show has to constantly subvert our expectations and give characters a huge makeover or do something you'd expect would be in the mid-season finale. But no, it's done in the 5th episode. To name some general criticisms, I don't really like how little time was given to the actual journal and more time was given to the flirting. I mean, like, what goes first, rom-com or the actual plot? I think I would like to see the plot first. The obvious observation that the human in the diary was just probably Bellows, but knowing the show, this is probably just a red herring and the twist will be something else like, I don't know, it's Kiki. I'm calling it, I swear. Overall, I thought that this plot was pretty good apart from the terrible pacing, but that's just this episode because it literally rivals Youngblood Old Soul's pacing, and that pacing is fucking faster than the speed of light. I swear to God, this is such a fucking terribly paced episode. Now to talk about this moment.
Your roots are growing out. Do you want to dye your hair again? So, how's it look?
Looks like you're about to get in big trouble with Mom. Ow.
I think it looks great. But yeah, maybe don't tell her I helped.
I'm sorry about everything. I'd understand if you never want to see me again.
It's different. Oh yeah.
Amity's haircut is, well, kind of bad in my opinion. Like, fundamentally flawed from a design standpoint, and also it doesn't really make sense in the context of this episode and her overall development. Maybe that's just my opinion, but let me explain further. Now, I get what they were trying to do, but I felt like dyeing it pink defeats the purpose of the appearance change. Amity's green/brown hair is supposed to represent the duality of her family, brown being her true self and the green being the blight inside of her. If dyeing her hair green was to try to fit in with the family, wouldn't it be more fitting to let her hair down and let it be brown? The haircut's fine, I just find the pink to be unnecessary and a bad color choice. I mean, look at her design. It's a bit of a mess now. The yellow in her eyes clashes with the pink but matches with the black and red. Her pale skin matches with the pink and yellow but clashes with the dark red slacks. From a design standpoint, I think it's a mess of palettes, while the other one had good synergy and proper dissonance, with the green and the white and purple matching perfectly, and the brown being the dissonance that made the design stand out. The shorter hair also makes Amity's head look bigger, and her facial features look smaller. I already have my own personal gripes with the bobblehead art style the show employs, so making Amity's head just look bigger for me, personally, this isn't objective at all, is incredibly unappealing. That's not to say it's all lost though. The haircut is fine, and I like that it sort of looks like Luce's haircut but upside down, but I'm not a big fan of this design. In fact, I think it's a downgrade from the previous one. It's not going to change my opinions on Amity as a character, but overall, her design is kind of disappointing, to be honest. To put in my 2 cents on the lore dump, the change in the art style when explaining the lore and the animation was really good. Overall, execution was perfect. The only thing that wasn't was that it was pretty obvious that Belos' voice actor voiced the human in the diary.
Ah, Lilith, you chose the wrong side.
My journey through the demon realm is far from over, but today, I humbly donate my journal to the ages.
Amity, I'm sorry. Seriously?
I'll be honest, this entire plot with Gus is fine, but I'm not a very big fan of how generic the conflict was. It was predictable, and I basically figured out the twist of the old Glandus gang. Oh, they're so cool, wow, they're heroes, awesome. And then they turn out to be evil. Like I said, predictable. What kept me interested was the setting. Like I previously stated, the entire graveyards with the stones was easily the best part of it. Just the place, the keeper, the vibe, the magic involved made me ask a lot of questions about the setting, but gave me enough information to fill in some of those blanks myself. I like when the Owl House does things that are subtle to better build the world, because most of the time I feel like I'm being bottle-fed information when I can easily just figure it out on my own, and this episode ripped the bottle straight out of my mouth and let me think for myself for once. I didn't feel like a child watching a fucking... The climax of this episode was also incredible, with the animation making great use of this illusion magic and getting in some really dark imagery. I love when kids shows take big risks, scare younger viewers, and entertain the older ones. Also, it's obviously a Gravity Falls reference. Before we review the other plot, let's get in some nitpicks out of the way, and it was mainly just one. If illusion magic makes illusions that aren't real, then why was Gus's fireball bigger? I was under the impression that all it did was make it look larger, not actually make the radius larger. Like, it broke through the wall, but it was a big hole, not the small fireball hole that it was supposed to be when he didn't use the illusion magic. I'm also not a big fan of the designs of the Glandus characters. I think they all look incredibly generic and copy-paste, and this can be said for most of the side characters of the show, except, however you want to pronounce it. And I'm not a huge fan of how inconsistent illusion magic was in this episode. It can be incredibly OP sometimes, but other times it was either portrayed as weak or unreliable, so I wish there was just more general consistency with that strand of magic. I'm gonna put in this disclaimer because I know that my criticisms are founded in some truth, but there is a little bit more complexity in the problems of the pacing and actual plot of the Owl House, because behind the scenes, it's a bit of a mess right now. The Owl House actually got greenlit for a season 3, but only got 3 44-minute specials. That means that season 2 is technically the final season for proper episodes, while the next one is gonna be sort of like the Avatar's kind of ending arcs. Does that really excuse the kind of terrible pacing the first season had and the second season? Not really, because they did have enough time to fix it, but what I'm saying is that it probably explains why they're trying to weave in so many things into season 2, because they have to prepare for the 44-minute specials, because they were told this information while working on season 2. So imagine you're writing a show and you were greenlit for 3 seasons and you are under the impression you will get 3 full seasons of 20-minute episodes, and then while you're in the middle of working on a second season, you are told you will only have actually 3 episodes and only have 44 minutes in each one to explain the rest of your lore. Isn't that going to make you panic a little bit and make you write things a little quicker so it can fit perfectly into the ending that you had in mind from the beginning? Disney is shooting down the Owl House and it's fucking it over sincerely. Shows like Amphibia are actually getting a full run, Star had a full run, Gravity Falls had a full run, but apparently the Owl House is special in that it's only going to get the 44-minute specials. I've never heard of another Disney show that canceled its 3rd season for these specials. That is so incredibly strange, isn't it?
Okay, I'll answer this one because a lot of people ask, the letters, the support, the trending, does it help Owl House get more content? Yes. The more attention we get, the more the higher chance we get of getting more content and the ability to do more stuff at the studio. It is too late for an extended season 3. That's been set in stone. We've started boarding. It's unfortunately that's a battle I've been like raging since for the past year, before I was even allowed to say anything about it. So unfortunately that ship has sailed. However, spin-offs, shorts, comics, all that stuff can still happen.
I know this review is all over the place, but I hope you get the idea that I'm trying to portray. I'm still optimistic, and I'll still tune in on Saturday to get my fix. But I really hope it doesn't force my hand to make something negative in the future. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. So the end card, yay!